Hello, George. Welcome to Stockholm and
Hello.
welcome to the fourth edition of the Data 2020 Summit. We're really pleased and honored to have you with us. So before we go on, can you just tell us a bit more about yourself, your background?
Yes, Surrender, and thank you very much for inviting me. Very great pleasure for me to be here. Okay, so basically, I suppose to put it simply, I'm a data nut. Would be one way to describe myself. That is to say, I've been working in IT for over 30 years, and in all of that time, the focus of my work has always been data. How to use data to represent a business, to support users, to create a much more effective way for organizations to work. And so I started as a developer, I've been a DBA, a technical architect. But more recently, what I've become particularly interested in are the challenges of what you might call enterprise level information management or data governance. Basically, until fairly recently, data was managed, as it were, at a system level. So you had a department, accounts or marketing or HR, and they had their own bespoke systems and they carried out functions, and that was the data they used. But now you've got two things. You've got organizations want to start looking at data at an enterprise level, so they want to see all across departments. And also the other thing is you have data being generated in a million different ways. It's no longer just the IT department that creates data. It's everybody with their phones and on the internet and so on. So these developments have really thrown up a whole set of new challenges for data governance. And I think, in a sense, it makes it such an exciting field to be working in at this moment.
Awesome. George, first of all, congratulations on your presentation. You spoke about, I would say, the challenges, but you spoke the great process fallacy, why the IT industry cannot deliver data-centric computing. So it sounds really interesting. If you don't mind just giving a short, brief recap of what was it all about?
Of course. I mean, the basic problem is that the IT industry grew up, if you like, automating things. So, the first computer systems were all about automating particular commercial functions like payroll, calculating insurance premiums, calculating pensions. Before computing, you had these hundreds, thousands of people working away to do these things. And then computers came along and were very, very effective. You think, for example, of when you go to the supermarket, that's been, you've got barcodes, that's been automated.
Yes.
So for many years, as I said, the focus of the IT industry was very much about automating existing manual processes. And it was very good at that and very effective. And the problem is that has created, if you like, a mindset, a particular way of seeing the world. There's a famous there's a saying for the man with a hammer, the whole world looks like a nail. Well, for the IT industry, the whole world looks like processes. And so this is the problem. IT is so used to this one way of working, you identify the process, you automate it, you've got your solution. Now you can do that with simple
It's not
things.
quite simple, right?
Pardon?
It's not quite
Well,
simple.
you can
There
do
is
it for
more to
things
it.
like payroll or stock control or calculating your bank balance. But if you're doing something like managing enterprise data, it's very, very difficult. Well, I say it's impossible to define that as a process. But unfortunately, that's what IT does, because it does. That is the only way it has of working. It doesn't know any other ways, and that is the great process fallacy. Because IT still believes in it. It believes that sooner or later it will come up with the process that will solve that problem, data governance, for example, and then everything will be fine. But it never will, because it, it's systemic. It's just not possible. It's too complex. Well, there are two main things. First is enterprise data governance is too difficult to be managed as a single process. And the second thing is that the focus on the process means that the IT industry doesn't realize what data is. They talk about data being the new oil, or they talk about data flows or data lakes. This idea that data is this kind of nebulous raw material that has to be processed in order to provide value. But in fact, data already is not like is not oil. Data is first and foremost structured context. With data, every item of data is connected potentially to every other item of data. Right. So, and it is those connections that give any single item of data its value. So if I say, if I say 42, all right, that as an item of data that has no value at all.
Yes.
But if I say, oh, that was Einstein who gave that value, and he gave it in the context of answering a specific question at a specific time in a specific place, each of those links gives that
And
that 42 more and more value. But what IT does, because it doesn't see that, because it thinks in terms of the process, it takes that number 42, takes it out of its context, puts it in a spreadsheet or a report, and you lose all, and so you don't have all that value is destroyed.
it's quite technical. I see. Data governance, in your words, what it is, what does involve, considerations, and some of its main challenges nowadays.
Well, I mean, following on from what I was just saying about how the IT industry tends to misunderstand data, to me, data governance is the requires us to understand what data really is and how it operates. This network, this set of linked items that are all connected. And if you understand that, then what you do is data governance is all about managing those connections and navigating them. So you want to say, for example, say for example, there's a concept. There's New York, okay?
Okay.
I mean, initially, we all know New York, right? It's a city.
Yeah.
But obviously, for everybody, New York is a different place. Some people see it as a financial center, or a fashion center, or a music center, or a place they fell in love, or a place that has great sandwiches. And what data governance should do is allow you to navigate those links for everyone. I mean, I've seen it more in a corporate context. So you say, okay, we have customers and that, or products, and then then data governance is managing the way that that initial concept is expressed in all the different departments that have anything to do with customers. So that's what data governance is. It's providing people with the ability to find out all the connections and use them.
So,
But also, sorry,
yeah, sure.
but also subject to security, so that if someone from marketing looks at customer data, they only see the data that they're allowed to see.
Yes.
And someone from finance sees the data they're allowed to see. Some of it's the same, some of it's different, but they don't have to, but they're all looking at the same data. And it's that, creating that single way of accessing data, that to me is data governance.
Data with a purpose.
Yeah.
Another important part of another theme of this event and in general, it's data quality. So it helps ensure that the data is accurate, is consistent, and fit for purpose. So how do we align that with the data governance?
Data governance, because it provides you with, as it were, a view of all data. So as say we have customer name,
Okay.
right? That's our starting point. And then customer name exists in 20 different systems in 20 different formats. But if you have that data governance in place, then actually data quality becomes much easier to deal with, because you can see, in the marketing department, this is how they structure the customer name, and in the finance department, they structure it differently. So you don't have to change them. You just have that transparency of the different ways in which different items of data are managed. So data quality doesn't mean changing data. Data quality means understanding, having that transparency of what data is there and how it's
What is
used.
it used for?
I mean, if you think of it like food quality. I mean,
Yeah, exactly.
if you go to a restaurant, in Stockholm there are loads of different restaurants, and,
Yes.
and you want to go to one that has particular kinds of food, all right, as opposed to another one. They're both good restaurants, but having that transparency, that view of all the different possibilities, you decide, oh, I want that one. And that's how you create data quality, not by changing data, but by keeping track of how people access data. And that is part of, again, the data governance. So data governance and data quality are very much related.
Previously, you mentioned that today there are being produced so different types of data.
Yes.
So that adds to the complexity of managing them, right? So what is your view on this difference in nature between managing data in different domains? We have master data, external data, marketing, IoT in these companies. So it's quite a challenge.
But, well, it is and it isn't. It's only a challenge because we, or the IT industry, creates these different definitions and then creates different processes to manage them, or different systems. But again, if you think of how human beings manage data, we don't, you don't have a separate bit in your brain for big data as opposed to master data. For you, all data is related. All information is connected, and you use it as you need it. It's an artificial, and I think not a productive distinction to make, to say, oh, we need this sort of process for big data and this sort of process for master data or this for Internet of Things. It's ultimately everything is connected.
George, centralization and consolidation on one hand
Yeah.
versus decentralization and fragmentations. Which parameters decide?
Well, I think there it is the increasing technological power that you have means that it is possible to have this kind of universal view. So you can look at data across systems, across countries. So I think it's the fragmentation is going to disappear.
What are some of the common pitfalls faced when we trying to implement these data tools?
The the, the main problem is not seeing the big picture. So you have a tool, it looks fantastic, it does clever things, and you want to use it. But is that really going to help you in the long run? In a way, you can think of it, well, you can think of it like single-use plastic. A plastic bottle
You just
allows
throw
you
it, yeah.
to have a drink. So you're solving a short-term problem. But when you throw that, when that plastic ends up in the oceans, it's creating a much bigger long-term problem.
Yes. Yes.
And that's the key thing. And again, it's so, because, to go back to my original point, because people think so much in terms of processes and not in terms of the overall data landscape, it's very easy to say, oh, I've got a fantastic tool, it allows me to do this. But
I think I understand your point. One last question, George. Looking at the data management and its state nowadays, what is your prediction for the nearest future?
it's very, very difficult to
It's changing everything every day.
it's changing, and I was at another presentation recently, and there was a senior manager there from Deutsche Bank, and he said, the IT industry is going to keep giving us more and more technology until we crash. I think there is a real sense that all the different types of data, all the different types of technology, that most, even big organizations, just can't cope with that anymore. I think a lot of organizations feel that they're drowning in data or drowning in technology.
Attacking from everywhere.
Yeah, and
Exactly.
and I'm not sure how that's going to play out.
Awesome. George, it was my pleasure. Thank you very much for joining us and for accepting to conduct this interview. Thank you very much. My pleasure.
So.